Welcome, third year students. Let us start today with the critical appreciation of sea and the skylark. Remember, I gave you points on which to develop critical appreciation. Now, this class is based on a practical lesson on sea and the skylark on critical appreciation. So, let us start with the critical appreciation. So, first of all, we give introduction of the poet. So, the introduction is G.M. Hopkins, one of the major romantic poets and a Jesuit priest, is also known for his experimentations in the field of poetry. He invented the sprung rhythm, which established him as an innovative writer of verse. Religious themes and praise of nature are the major themes of Hopkins. His works were published years after his death. He never published during his lifetime. But by 1930, his works were recognized as one of the most original literary accomplishments of his century. Now, this poem, which is included in our course of study, The Sea and the Skylark, it is a sonnet which represents the polarity between water and air, sea and the skylark, the representatives of nature. These two entities are the representatives of nature. It also presents before us the sharp contrast between human beings and nature. So this was the introduction or the theme of the poem. Now, if we talk about the mood of the poet in this poem, Sea in the Skylark, he is in a thoughtful mood. He is thinking over the deep contrast of human beings with that of the entities of nature. He is deeply thinking and feeling sad about the lost cheer and charm of human beings. Then, this point includes the summary of the poem, and as I told you that this is the longest part of critical appreciation where we have to attempt this detailed summary of the poem. So, the poet is standing on a seashore and listening to two noises. The noises are paradoxically too old to end. Now, why is it a paradox? Because we see that generally old things are near their end, but he is saying that they are too old that they can't end. From his left side, he can hear the coming and retrieving sound of the waves. The sound of the waves is not even. It is not regular, but they dash against the seashore. And when they dash against the seashore, there is a roaring loud noise, roaring loud song. And the sound of the retrieving waves is like a soft and dying music of a lullaby. Now, you remember lullaby is sung by mothers of young infants, and it decreases. The volume and the pitch of a lullaby decreases when the baby goes to sleep. So, in the same way, the sound of the waves decreases when the waves retrieve towards the sea again. So, the sound of flood and fall. Now, what is flood and fall? Coming and going of the waves. It is a repetitive and frequent sound closely related to the movements of the moon. Now, what are the movements of the moon? The waxing and waning means the increasing motions of the moon and the decreasing motions of the moon. So, due to the gravitational pull, what happens when the gravitational pull is at its maximum, the waves are also very active. They are strong. And when the moon is waning, then what happens? The movement of the waves is also affected by the movement of the moon, by the gravitational pull of the moon. Now, to continue with the summary, so on his right ear, he is able to listen to the sound of the waves, and now he'll listen to the sounds coming from his left ear. So he says, on his left side, the poet can hear the melodious music of skylark, which is singing offland. Offland means on the sky. The sound is rash, fresh, rewinded, new skinned score. It is rash and fresh. Fresh means it is new, and rash means it is not premeditated. It is not practiced. It is spontaneous. So it is fresh and spontaneous. It is not premeditated or practiced. It is singing. The skylark is singing in a crisp voice while flying in a circular movement in the sky. It is singing in such a manner as if it will go on singing forever till it has poured and emptied all its musical store. So it is singing and singing continuously. It is making circular round movements in the sky and singing. Now we may ask a question that how the poet comes to know that it is making circular movements in the sky when the skylark is unseen. So the answer is that when the skylark makes circular movements in the sky, the sound is affected. When the skylark is near us, the sound is more and the sound becomes less. When making a circular movement, it is far. So now this was the end of the octave, the 8 lines, and now the sestet begins. And as we all know that in Miltonic or Petrarchan sonnet, there is a change of mood. There is a sudden change of mood in the mind of the poet, which is called volta. So till now he was describing the sea, he was describing the skylark, but now suddenly he becomes sad on the sharp contrast between the originality of the sea and the skylark on the one side and the lost charm of man. Now suddenly, why does he become sad? Because when he thinks of the sea and the skylark, he is reminded of the human being, and the contrast is unavoidable. He thinks that though materialistically man has developed a lot, but emotionally, spiritually, he has lost his originality. So he says that man stands nowhere in this race. He does not qualify even for the competition. Now, what is the competition? The competition is of retaining the originality. So he does not feel satisfied over the performance of human beings. The sea and the skylark are such entities which have retained their primal originality, but man has sadly lost his cheer and charm and is running after materialism. Man is suffering from fractured personality and he is heading fast. He is hasting towards his last dust. Last dust means death. Now it is not just physical death, but emotional death, spiritual death, and his first slime. Now here he wants to say that on the 7th day of creation, if we go to the Genesis chapter of Bible, we think we are aware that for 7 days the work of creation was done by God, and each day the creation was better than the previous day. So on the last day God made man, and man was superior to all the other things made on the last 6 days. So he is known as the crown of creation. He is the best creation of God. But it is very sad that the best creation of God has lost its originality, has lost its primal cheer and charm, and he is suffering from fractured personality, and even the birds and the water are better than human beings. So if we talk of the type of poem, this is the genre of poem. Genre means the form of literature. So Sea and the Skylark is a Petrarchan sonnet. You remember what is a Petrarchan sonnet? Petrarchan sonnet is divided into 2 parts. They are octave and sestet, and after the octave and with the beginning of the sestet there is a sudden change of mood, that is called volta, and that change of mood is signified by a punctuation mark which is called caesura. Now this word caesura is made from the word cease. So the thought process of the poet ceases at a certain point in the poem, and another thought process starts. So here what happens? First he was describing the motions of the waves, then he described the beautiful melodious voice of the skylark, but suddenly he becomes sad. Now that sudden change of mood after the octave is called volta. The rhyme scheme of this sonnet, because it is a Petrarchan sonnet, is A B B A, A B B A, C D E, C D E. If we look at the poem, we see that the last word of the first line matches with the last word of the fourth line, and the last words of second and third line, they rhyme with each other. So this is the rhyme scheme of this poem, The Sea and the Skylark. Now let us deal with diction. Now, what is diction? Diction means words, terms. So we have to look for terms and words which are selected by the poet from any particular field. So in this poem, the poet has used new coinages. New coinages means he has made or devised his own words for his particular use, and he has also made use of uncommon words. For example, pelt, winch, whirl, tench, skeined, etc. A lot of words he has used. Then in the volta, he has used words expressing sorrow. And those words are shame, shallow, ring right out, lost, break, last dust, sordid, turbid, etc. So you can find out in this poem another diction also, diction related to the movements of the sea, to the movement of the moon, etc. Now, literary beauties. Now, it is the literary beauties through which we make a poem beautiful. So, we have to find out, we have to dissect the poem and look for various devices or literary beauties used by the poet in order to beautify the language of the poem. Now, in the very first line, the poet has made use of paradox. He says he can hear two noises too old to end. Generally, what do we say? That old things are nearing their end. But paradoxically, the poet says that noises of the waves and the melodious music of the skylark are immortal. Now, if they are old, they are supposed to end. But the poet says that these two things have continued to be the same from time immemorial, and they will continue to be the same till the end of this world. So that is why he says these are two noises too old to end. So this is a very beautiful example of paradox. Now, metaphor is also there in this poem. The sound of the rising waves dashing against the shore is compared to the sound of a roaring lion. So, roaring lion makes a very thundering sound. In the same way, when the waves are coming and dashing against the shore, the upcoming waves, the sound is like the roaring lion. Another example of metaphor in this poem is that human beings are compared with a cared for crown. Now, why this expression has been used, cared for crown? Because man created human beings as the best of his creations, best among his creations. So he is the crown of creation and cared for. God took a lot of care in order to make human beings. So this is also an example of metaphor. Then there is a biblical allusion. Now, what is a biblical allusion? Biblical, this word is framed from Bible, and allusion means reference. So here the poet is referring to the Bible when he says the expression, we life's pride also refers to the Genesis chapter. Now, this is the first chapter of the Bible, the chapter Genesis, when on the seventh day God created his best creation, that is man. So that is why we are life's pride. Life can be found in many forms. Even amoeba has life. Trees have life. Animals have life. But we are the best creation by God. Now again, one more biblical allusion is man's first slime. In the first chapter of the Bible, again, the Genesis chapter, it is mentioned that all the matter, all the material from which the things of nature were made originally, it lied in the form of a slime. Now what is a slime? Daldal. You must have heard this word daldal. So everything is mixed in it. Mud, water. So before the creation of the world, all the elements were intermixed. It was a confused mixture of matters of air, water, earth, sky and fire. Now, imagery. The poet creates an image of ongoing game from which man is ring right out, means he is disqualified. In this competition, man does not even qualify because he has lost that cheer and charm of Earth's prime, past prime. Only those entities can enter this competition which are pure and have been successful in retaining their originality and charm. But shamefully, man is not qualified to enter into this game. So a very beautiful imagery is created by the poet. Now he has also made use of binaries. Now what are binaries? Binaries means opposite words or opposite thoughts or opposite terms. The following words and expressions present before us binaries like right, left, shore of land, veer, wend, flood, fall, too old to end, and man's last dust. Now this poem has also made use of alliteration, very impressive alliterations. Notice the sound of S and other sounds which I have made bold. Now these are the sounds which have been repeated. So very beautiful alliterative effect is being created by the poet. So the sea and the skylark. Here the sound of S is being repeated. Ear and ear. Wild winch whirl, the sound of V. Now cheer and charm, the sound of ch. Make and making, the sound of m is being repeated. Now if we talk of comparison and contrast, this poem can be compared with another poems and it can be contrasted too. So first, if we deal with comparison, the movements and melodious music of the skylark reminds us of the poem Ode to the Skylark. Remember Ode to Skylark? You must have studied this poem in your second year, and this poem is by P.B. Shelley. And in this poem also, P.B. Shelley describes and expresses the movements of the skylark, the melodious music created by the skylark. The theme of this poem can be compared with Wild Swans at Cool by W.B. Yeats, which also deals with human weariness and the energy of the swans. Now here also in Wild Swans at Cool, there is a comparison and contrast between human beings and the entities of nature represented by swans. And here also we find the same theme that human beings are being compared with the sea and the skylark. Contrast. There is a sharp contrast between the purity and originality of the sea and the skylark on the one side and the lost charm of the human beings at another. And there is a contrast in the mood of the poet in octave and sestet. As I told you that there is a volta, a sudden change in the mood of the poet after the octave and with the beginning of the sestet. So these were the points of comparison and contrast. Now if we talk of language and syntax, the poet has used compressed syntax. Compressed syntax means his language is epigrammatic. In a few words, he has explained a lot of things. You remember the saying in Hindi, Gagar mein Sagar. What do you mean by Gagar mein Sagar? Means a lot has been said in very few words. And naturally, he has made use of sprung rhythm to fit his poetical requirements. The language is filled with new coinages. New coinages means new words and unusual expressions. Then critics comment. It is advisable to insert one or two critics comment in order to make your answer more impressive. So here I have made use of a critical comment by I.A. Richards. He has commented that Hopkins' poetry is laden with fresh coinages and innovative approach. We see that there are fresh coinages, newly framed words in his poem, and he has also made use of innovative approach. Now, what is that innovative approach? That he has praised the sea and the skylark in order to present before us the sharp contrast between their originality and the lost cheer and charm of the human beings. Now, the last point is my point of view. Now, here you have to write in your own words what are your views on the poem. How do you like this poem, about the language of the poem, the theme, it may be the syntax, the diction, the poetic beauties. What do you like about this poem? So, Hopkins' poetry is more modern than Victorian with regards to its subject matter, language, experimentation, and syntax. We see that he is by birth a Victorian, but his poetry project modernism in more than one matters. The language is complex, but it is very impressive, and the theme of the poem, The Sea and the Skylark, is developed very skillfully. The poem appeals to us both thematically and stylistically. Now, this was the example of critical appreciation, and we have applied it to one of our poems, The Sea and the Skylark. I hope you understood the poem. Thank you.